Greetings, this is Sean, and today I'm going to show you an old technique. This was actually a technique used back by the monastery monks in Tudor, England, back in the 1400s, back in that time. Using a goose feather here. Well, this happens to be a goose feather, and this is a bamboo skewer. And what they did, this is how they made their paint brushes for when the monks would do what's called illuminating text, illuminating scrolls and books and whatnot. And first off, you take a good pair of scissors and you cut. A lot of this is discretionary, but you cut it almost halfway. You don't want to go through that rib that's there. You want to go up to or just in the middle of that rib of the feather. And you'll pull away the loose part that's there. And then you go down, like I say, a lot of this is just at your discretion, however big you want to make the brush. I go down about an inch and a half or so. And then you cut through the rib and through the other side at that point. Then you're done using the main part of the feather. Then what you need to do is strip off all of the hairs on both sides of the rib, but don't try and do it all at once because you'll tear through the rib. Trust me, I know from experience. Just take a small piece down at the bottom and work your way up, pulling 4, 5, 10, if there's any kind of give, move down and just do a few at a time. Yes, it's a little bit time consuming, but you're better off doing that. Otherwise, you'll rip the whole rib off, and it's actually called a bone, but we'll call it a rib. Then you do the other side up to the point where you made that cut across. And what you want to do is you want to strip it to where both sides are symmetrical somewhat on both sides of the rib. So you'll see here in a minute that I actually end up taking a little bit more off. Then what you want to do is you want to measure the amount of the rib that you have left and first cut off the tip of the feather because it's solid at the end. So you want to just cut a small amount off to where you have a hole in the end of it. And then you cut the length of that feather, the bone there, the rib, to about the same length, a little bit shorter than the part that you stripped off. And the little piece that you saw fly out, that's actually what's inside of the feather, the little hairs and things that come into it. Actually blood vessels, and then you're left with a hollow tip there, and I'm just poking out some more of the vessels and whatnot that were inside. And then what you do is you take the feather that you've stripped off and you pull it through the tip. So you want the tip end sticking up with the feathers going through it, and then the rib goes down through the wider part like that. And as you pull it, you can adjust it as wide or as big as you want to make a brush. And it's just a single strand across. And here's where I was saying you need to kind of make it to where it's the same on both sides across where you cut it at, right there where I'm pointing, so that the feathers that remain up on top are somewhat symmetrical or triangle shaped. You can even cut that off to make it a different shape if you want. You can have it bigger, you can have it smaller. The more you have available, the more you can do with it too, of course. What I was trying to go for was just a single line of feather hairs going across, and that becomes your brush. Now I took the bamboo skewer, which I thought it was a bigger one. I thought I had some bigger ones, but I only have this size here. And then you just pull down the feather to adjust it how you want it to look, and then glue it in place. Now the monks, they didn't really glue it. They used string to tie off that feather, and the handle was actually made out of wood, so that they could replace that tip from time to time. All I'm doing is, obviously they didn't use super glue, but I'm just super gluing that in place so that it'll hold it, and then it's not going to be adjustable, and I'll just have to make another one when I'm ready. But if you had a bigger skewer or a smaller feather, you could push the skewer up in and hold it in place to paint with, and then you would be able to pull the bamboo skewer out and take the feather out when it got too dirty, and then you could put new feathers in place, and you'd have a paintbrush that you can change the tip out when it gets bad. So anyway, here I'm just putting some accelerator on it to hold it all in place, and then I'm going to demonstrate how it paints. It actually does pretty well. This was actually the first time I actually tried to paint with it, but I've been researching this after something I saw in a history channel, and this is how, like I say, how the monks made their illuminating pens or paint brushes for when they illuminated text. Which illumination is when they, after they've written the text out with the calligraphy, they would go back and make the capital letter at the very beginning really fancy, and when they made it real fancy with the gold paint and the red paint, and that was called illumination. And here you can see, if you run it sideways, this works just like a calligraphy pen. It really does. You can paint it broad strokes, or if you drag it that way, you can make thin strokes. So you have two kinds of brushes in one, and if you had they have different kinds of feathers. You got the flight feathers and the wing feathers and the quill feathers, which this was actually a quill feather. You can make that point almost hairline thin. I mean, it was incredible to watch how they did it. So this is just from what I gathered and from what I've been practicing and trying to figure out how to make these feathers, and they actually hold the paint for quite a while. So anyway, hope this helped. Hope this was enjoyable. Have a better day, as I always say.